There is a primal fire that burns inside all of us. We either choose to fuel it or choose to ignore it. Should we ignore it, we're left in the darkness that keeps us unhappy, unproductive, and unsuccessful. But should we choose to fuel that fire? Day in and day out, we will find our strength. We will kill our weakness. We will embrace the life that was meant for us. And we will find our true purpose. And purpose is the key to greatness. This is the Primal Fire Podcast.
Hello, good people, and welcome to the very first Primal Fire Podcast. I'm your host, Jayson the Argonaut. For those who are unfamiliar with what the Primal Fire is, the Primal Fire is a concept that I created based on the fact that it is my belief that each and every one of us has a fire inside of us that we either choose to ignore or we choose to fuel. If we choose to ignore it, then we're left in this proverbial darkness, lost, unhappy, unproductive, and not knowing where to go. But if we choose to fuel it, we will find strength. A lot of the times the strength we didn't know was there. And we'll find purpose. And purpose is the key to greatness and success. With that being said, if it wasn't for my guest today, this podcast wouldn't be happening and we wouldn't be having this conversation. I had almost given up on social media, and Nathan found me because of my content, and also one of his colleagues had found me because of my content, and they had asked me to write a short article for Barbarian Rhetoric, and we'll get into what Barbarian Rhetoric is here shortly. And so I wrote a quick article and it was received well. Wrote a different one that was also received well, and we went from there. So we'll be discussing what Barbarian Rhetoric is, what the movement is, because I consider it a movement, and how I like to start all of my episodes is with a write-up of choice that the guest prepares that I'm going to read at the beginning of the episode. So I'll be doing that now. And this is the write-up that Nathan provided for me. Death and I are friends. As I see it now, we've met many times over the years and created a bit of a relationship. I do understand why many still fear death. For death can be a scary individual to those that do not understand the workings of the natural world. For me, I was introduced at a very young age to sickness and death, for my mother died of cancer. From my understanding, she tried many things, considered experimental at the time, which now have been refined to all but a cure. She passed from this world when I was 7. I do not believe at the time I truly understood anything other than she was gone. People have told me through the years I need to revisit that time to look at it closely, give myself closure. These are the same people who live too much in the past. Death is a part of life. Both need to happen. In the following years, I lost several more family members to sickness. We would joke that a funeral was our yearly family reunion. Death for some is release from the shackles of this world. For others, life was cut short. I still believe there's a reason. I look back at my youth. I had to deal with many things one would say that I shouldn't have. Yet, that is part of what has made me who I am today. I now know that I was going through a lot of processing. My father remarried, and I gave that woman hell. She's a good woman, she stayed, 39 years and counting, when many would have run screaming. She is my mother. I was blessed even in a dark hour. So my guest today is veteran, entrepreneur, content creator that many know and many don't know yet, but they will know. He has created a concept called Barbarian Rhetoric, which helps to bring awareness to kind of the same thing I am. It's barbarians trying to make it in a civilized world. So without further ado, Nathan, otherwise known as Steel Janz, I'm honored to have you here.
Thank you, sir. Honored to be here. Glad we can make this happen.
Absolutely. So I wanted to start with the beginning, childhood on up to who you are now, just as much as you want to tell some of the experience you had as a child that brought you to where you are today.
That's a long period of time now.
Well, I mean, you're old. You're really...
No, I'm middle-aged. I'm going with the middle-aged. It still feels like a long time.
Right.
When I look through the years, I look at it as different phases of life. My youth was one phase up into my early 20s, then my early 20s up to about 29 when I joined the military, because I joined late. And then I did that into the 30s, got out of the military. That was another phase of work. And then this past year, I've passed into my current phase. So overall, I'm one of the lucky guys. I had a good family. My dad was great. Mom was great. We heard a little bit about that before. But I had that nuclear family. I had that thing that a lot of people are looking for. I have awesome uncles. They taught me a lot through the years. They're still teaching me stuff. I had good grandfathers. I had all that learning from them. I traveled a lot with them. They taught me a lot. They explained a lot to me. And as any kid, you don't realize what you were learning at the time. It may take 15, 20 years later, and then you become an adult and you go, oh, that's what they meant. Or, oh, but they still taught it to me. One of the biggest things that I hear nowadays in our current environment is, when did you get red pilled? I've never been red pilled. If you want to claim that, it was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was taught all those values. I was taught all that stuff young, and I've carried it through. Now, have I fallen off the wagon at some point? Absolutely. Did I go down dark paths and I knew better? Yes. But at the same time, it was always a part of me. Just because I gave it up or I thought I knew better or whatever doesn't mean it just vanished and then I relearned it or something. It's always just been there.
Yeah, I've noticed that the red pill movement and the MGTOW movement lately has gotten to be sort of akin to what the straight edge movement was in the 90s. We get it. You don't do drugs. We get it. Great. And now it's gotten to the point where you still got a lot of good guys out there that are still trying to help men wake up, which is, what the red pill is. For those who don't know what that is, watch The Matrix. And basically, blue pill is beta, red pill is alpha. You wake up, you realize, hey, this is how you be a man. It's really not something. It's like Nathan said, he never was red pilled. It's not really something to get into. It's a separate movement for that, and there are podcasts for that. But it's gotten to the point where people think that, so we end up with information overload. And it's getting to the point where the red pill and all that kind of stuff is information overload. And it really is simple. And that's the kind of things that we're trying to bring to light for people to realize, is that it's not that hard to be a man, to be a good man, to do what you're supposed to do. It's follow your purpose. You have a purpose. Don't be an idiot. Don't be an asshole. Be honorable. Be strong. And these are all virtues that you need to have. You don't need a handbook for it. And guys like you were really fortunate because you had those uncles. You had strong figures in your life, strong masculine figures in your life, and a lot of guys don't have that now. And it's very destructive to them. It's very destructive to us. It's very destructive to women. And what do you really think it's going to take to just rattle them awake, to realize how simple it is to ignore all this crap they're being fed and to just get with the program and be a man?
Asking a deep question there. The simplest one, we'll go simple on this. And at the same time, we're going to hit my 20s. In my early 20s, I got to meet my mentor through French and Indian War reenacting. We hooked up and we go. He was a Navy guy, spent his time on a carrier, Vietnam era, and he took me under his wing. He was that guiding light that I needed to come through there. I had the structure as a youth, but at that point, he filled in all the gaps. He was very well common sense, worldly knowledge, all of that. And I think that's one of the key points that is missing is these guys don't have mentors. So even though you may not have had the best childhood, when you start hitting 18, 19, 20, you can tell, hey, there's something I'm missing. And the guys that are making it are going and finding mentors, or they're searching, or they're hunting out. And I think that's what rattles the cage. They hook up with the guy, they go, I want to be him, or I want to be like him. And either or, and then they start conversing. And when you start doing those conversing, if the guy takes you under his wing, he starts departing knowledge. This is how you get there. This is how you get fit, finances, everything. And it starts shaking and it'll shake you out. And I think there it is. It's passing on that knowledge. Now, there are some guys that go it alone and they stumble and they figure it out themselves and everything else. And good for them. Mm-hmm. But the bigger thing, the fast track, is getting someone that's already been down the pathway before you.
Right.
They can pull you along. And if you need to get down the path, you look farther down the path to see if someone can pull you along. And basically you're daisy chaining men up through, the whole thing. And I don't feel that it's so much you have to rattle these guys to get them going. It comes back to they just don't know. And I have to repeat that self. It's like I'll say something to some man or I'll say something, and to me it's just freaking common sense. It's so simple and you're making it so complicated. And then I realize it's, okay, you really have never been taught this and you don't know. You're struggling, you're flopping along by yourself, doing the best you can. And that's one of those areas I like to help out in if I can. A kind word here, something here, a little mentoring. Other guys I have spent more time with, and it's give and take. You only have so much you can give to take. And at the same time, I have other men that are helping me out. Mm-hmm. So it's a two-way street. And you have to be open to new ideas. And you have to go, well, there's more to the world than just being, I don't know, a freaking rat in a cubicle.
Right. Yeah. And not that there's anything wrong, because if your purpose is, IT or something like that, then as long as you're chasing that, that's what it's all about. You got to find your purpose. And if you're a nerd, because there's nothing wrong with being a nerd, let me go ahead and say that. There's nothing wrong with being a nerd. I mean, that's what I used to do for a living was computer related endeavors. Thank God I don't do it anymore. But if that's your job, is to sit in a cubicle all day, that's fine. But there are things outside of that you need to complement that, and it's really difficult to say anything without reinventing the wheel. You gotta, it starts in the gym. You got to get yourself in shape. People think that it starts with the mind. Get your mind right and the rest will fall into place. With your mind right, if your mind's right and your body's failing, then that's not going to get you anywhere. Because your mind, unless you have dementia or something, your mind's not going to deteriorate as fast as your body's going to. So it's really all about it's really all about getting out there and putting in the work. If you don't have a manual labor job, good for you. Get out there and find a way to put in other work. You got to lift weights. You got to do martial arts. You got to do the things that men need to do, because if everything's being, I guess the proper word would be squelched. If everything is
like
just, yeah, everything is just
status
no,
quo.
right, status quo. You don't know what you're supposed to be doing. You have to get out there and make yourself feel pain. I don't mean get out there and get injured. I mean, get out there and feel pain, feel suffering, feel what it's like. Because a lot of these kids, it's kind of a catch-22, because some of these kids are coming from broken homes. Some of these, male children are coming from broken homes. And that's one problem. And then you got the trust fund kids who are also handed everything, and they don't know what the hell to do either. So it's really up to you. That's why I want to get into this. It's really up to guys like you who are putting information out there to help young boys and help men who have lost their way. Because I was one of those guys who lost their way. And through reading and research and things of that nature, I was able to find a whole lot of great men who were able to teach me things that just, some of the things were aha moments. Some of the things I already knew that I needed to re-know. So tell us a little bit about the whole basis behind Barbarian Rhetoric, what it is, how you got to that point, why you felt it. We know why you felt it was necessary, but I want to hear it in your words, and how you went about establishing that. Did it go through other entities before it became a blog? What was that all about?
Barbarian Rhetoric has always been the name of the blog, but it actually started off me just I wanted to throw my thoughts out of what would I tell my son. Something happened to me, here you go, he could go read. And I think in that term of, okay, what does a father tell a son? Let other fathers know, hey, and maybe their fathers didn't tell them. So it was a two-way street. It's working that connection. I'm kind of in the middle of there. And it's like, okay, father's talking this way, but at the same time, sons, have you talked to your fathers? Dad might not know how to talk to you. So maybe you need to be the one that stakes up and go talk to him, or vice versa, depending on age and circumstance and everything. And that's how I originally started. And as we both are, being Conan fans and Robert E. Howard, for the subject matter, it's like I like that concept. I like, Conan was a barbarian, but he came to civilization, but he stayed a barbarian. He never changed and became civilized. Even when he became king, did he indulge in the luxuries at times? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, he was still a barbarian, and that was always in my mind. And then it was like, okay, how do you tie that in with the written word? You can't go around bashing skulls, even though we would like to. It's not acceptable in a civilized world. Right. So that's where rhetoric came from. And that's two of the main words why it came together, and it slowly evolved over time. I worked it from there, and then I had a little bit of a lull, and then I wanted to bring other writers in. I was getting other viewpoints, other people writing about fathers and sons, did some of that, and then it just evolved a little bit more over the year, and then it stalled. It was like I just, not that there wasn't more material to write, I just wasn't sure where I wanted to go with it. It didn't feel like I was going in the right place. And I took some time off, and when I came back, I went, all right, this is what I want to do. I want to start showcasing other people besides my own words. There's all these men that have all this stuff. I go searching for all these blogs all the time, and there's no good resource to go find people. I mean, unless you're really digging hard and Googling, and you can hit it now. And I mean, I have over 30 some plus writers, and it's still growing. And most of these men have blogs of their own, or they've written some essays or a book or something. And it's like, I wanted to make it a epicenter for people to hit it, turn around and go, oh, I like this guy. Perfect. Go read him more. You know, one of my good friends, Anthony, he does Polite Savage, Peaceful Parenting.
Mhm.
Not everybody wants to know about it, but the people that do can go get more information on it.
Right.
We got Masculine by Design, Craig James, just always dropping gems. Hunter Drew with Family Alpha, same thing. And they all are standalones, but at the same time, not everybody knows about them. And then I have guys that are just getting into blogging, and one of those is Chris, and he has so much to say, and I'm like, yeah. And then off IG, that's where we met, and I'm like, Jayson has some thoughts in his head. It's like, here you go. I want to get those on there because I like all these different viewpoints. My first guy that I got off of IG was Bronson Lee, Hellrune. And he did that article on Stoicism, and it just hit home. That one talked to me, and I went, you know, there's all these guys over on this platform that I haven't played. I need to start asking them if they'd like to write. And I'm slowly just growing it. Someone has interest. I've had some guys reach out and go, hey, can I write something? Absolutely. You know, the only thing I don't talk about is modern politics for good reasons.
Yep.
And that's where it's evolved. That's where it's going. And just getting more thoughts, because I think there's more barbarians out there than there are civilized guys at the end of the day. They just need to get their voice out there and heard.
That's right. Like you said, you've got over 30. I mean, Barbarian Rhetoric is huge. There's a lot of great content. There are a lot of great authors. And like you said, a lot of them have their own blogs. And it's becoming a movement, which is a great thing. We're a few steps short of being called alt-right Nazis, because that's the next logical thing.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, but the very first, the opening on the about page on Barbarian Rhetoric is you put the definition, because people need to understand that this isn't a bunch of overage men playing dress up. It's like you said, you can't go out there bashing skulls and things like that. We're not LARPing. We're not doing any of this stuff. This is rhetoric. A lot of it is metaphor. A lot of it is mindset. And if you have that mindset, it goes right back to working a cubicle job. You can work a 12-hour-a-day cubicle job. But if you go in there and you pound the iron and you do the things you're supposed to do, then you're going to be okay. It actually legitimizes your desk job. So you start with the definition of a barbarian, which is a person in a savage, primitive state who is an alien to the civilized world. Now, this is where the problem with fire comes in. Robert E. Howard actually spoke about this. And basically what he said, and I'm paraphrasing, is that we don't belong in a civilized society. Civilization is seen as an advancement, when really what it is about 1,000 steps back. We no longer hunt for our food. We no longer have to build shelter to shield ourselves from the cold and the sun. We no longer have to gather the crops, reap, sow, any of that stuff. And this goes back to, that's part of the problem. And this is something, and I'm not telling everybody to drop what they're doing, go out and live off grid, build a tiny house and grow their own crops and hunt wild boar. If you want to, that's great. I plan on taking that up in the future. But the whole issue with men today, and there are various authors that write about it. You're one of them. Roman McClay is one of them. John Eldridge is one of them. Matt Stevens is one of them. They're in their own way bringing to light that we don't belong now. We still belong there. I was reading the Primal Eating. It's a book. It's Chris Neander. Chris Neander and Cynthia Thurlow wrote it, and they were talking about how we really haven't evolved physically all that much, and that's why the food is killing us and the environment is killing us, because we just don't belong now. So this is something that's important for everyone to realize, is that a barbarian is not what you think they are. They're strong, they're honorable. A lot of times they're monogamous. They start tribes, which is another great concept, is the fact that human beings are eusocial, which means we have hierarchies, we have tribes, we have people that have specific jobs. You have people now who are shunning the eusocial nature and taking jobs out there in the industries that they're not meant for. So you've got a guy who should have been a lumberjack who's working in an office, and a guy who's working in an office who should have been a lumberjack. And it just doesn't work for them. So we've taken that tribal nature out of the eusociality of the human species. And that's why we're all completely screwed, confused, sad, unhappy, don't know what to do. And that's what I think is so great about barbarian rhetoric. So with that being said, I want to move into your military days. So you're in the Air Force.
Yes.
Not the most barbaric branch.
No,
by any means, but
we're not called the Chair Force for nothing. You got to be comfy.
So why did you decide on the air? First of all, why did you decide to join the military? Because you said you joined at a late age. You were 29 years old. So why did you decide to join at a late age, and why did you decide to join at all? What brought you to that?
It started off for selfish reasons, like anything. I wanted to go back to school. So I actually joined the Air National Guard. What was funny is I was going to join up and do security forces with a buddy of mine. But in our conversations, I lost the fact that he was with the Army. I thought he was with the Air Force. I signed up with the Air Force. Yeah, we never did anything together. It was quite hilarious after we figured it all out. But yeah, I went into the Air Guard, and I ended up doing 4.5 years, give or take, of active duty service. But originally went in to go for doing schooling. You know, guard, do your weekend, go to school. But there was so much going on at the time in the mid-2000s with everything. I ended up doing 187 days overseas in Iraq. And I did INCONUS. I worked at the base, and it was good. I was security forces, which, you know, basically guarding the base, doing some LE work. And it had its own savage sense to it. You know, you had that schedule, and I needed that stability at the time. And it worked well. I was going a lot in personal relationship, a lot was going on. But that was like the defining thing, and I needed those group of men. Be it good, bad, or otherwise, it was like I was missing that to a certain extent. We talk about tribes. I didn't have one at the time. And the more I got into the military and got into it, it was like, I liked this. I enjoyed it. And I put my time in. Things go as they may. But it taught me a lot. It gave me that whole military sense. And now looking back, if people want to do military, I'm like, go in as a kid and get it done.
Yeah.
You're going to learn so much. You're going to grow up quick, but you're going to get taught stuff.
Yeah.
If you go a little bit later in life and have some experience in you, it still doesn't hurt. It gives you, but you're, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking at? You're still at a different level. You know, having some younger kid tell you, you know, is 3 ranks up from you, it'll grind on you. So you got to let a lot of ego go. You can't, you know, it's like, hey, they've been there, done this already, and I'm learning. Right. So there's a lot to work with on that.
Yeah, I had seen somebody the other day. It may have been, I can't remember who it was. I don't want to just start throwing out names. And say, you said my name on your podcast. It's copyright, whatever. I don't think they'll be like that, but I can't remember who it was. They said they learned, they're around in their 30s, and they learned something from a 20-year-old. You know, because you can learn from anyone. Don't ever think for 1 second you can't learn from somebody. And I've always heard the stories about that, about you know, the sergeant's like 50, the lieutenant's 21, and the lieutenant's out there telling the sergeant what's up, and the sergeant just hates him. I picture Clint Eastwood
yes, being
bossed around by Chris Hemsworth, and he's just seething with hatred. But and then the lieutenant's out there under fire, and the sergeant has to save his ass and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, if you can just take one gem from someone, even if, I mean, I've learned a lot from children. Children will teach you some stuff.
Yes.
So you always want to learn as much as you can. Always pay attention to the elderly, to the young, all that kind of stuff. So what was something that you hated about the military?
Funny enough, when I went overseas, you get into a certain sense of everything's just provided for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're in that combat, everything's given. And then coming back to the States, and it'd be like, oh, I need a bottle of water. Well, yeah, it'll cost you $2. What?
Right.
And the shock coming back of, well, everything was, I can see why guys want to be deployed. There's a lot of bad that goes along with it, but I can see why it's like everything's there. You don't have to worry about food. You don't have to worry about anything. I mean,
right.
How's it? Yeah, you're getting this and that, but you're like, oh. And coming back and readjusting. I think that was like one of my hardest points is, and I wasn't even over there very long. Compared to a lot of your Army and Marine, I mean, basically 6 months for an Air Force guy at the time was a long time. So it's one of those, you're looking at it and they're like, So when other guys come back and say they're having a hard time readjusting, and I'm like, I was over there for 6 months and you were over there for 18 months. Yeah, I can understand why. And it's a shock factor to your system. You're just coming back. So it was both a good time and a bad time for me, because that was when I started thinking, do I want to continue to do this or do I want to get out? And at the time, some other decisions were made, but I was like, all right, I'm on my way out the door. This isn't for me anymore. I was like, I got to come back to civilian, because that was a hard point. And you have to make those choices. It's like, okay, am I going to stay with it or am I going to go back, do the family thing and whatever else? And a lot of guys deal with this every day. Mm-hmm. And it's a challenging time in their life. And you look at them and go, you want to talk about it? There is no answer. Right. That's the one thing. There is no answer to that question. Every man or woman has to answer that for themselves. But sometimes just talking with someone that's been there before, you can go, hey, you can make the changes. You can do this stuff.
Right.
So,
speaking of dark days, bad days, tell me about your darkest days. What was a period of darkness that you had? Because people need to hear about this from other individuals. What was the darkest time in your life, and how did you get through that? And did it pave the way for the great things that you've done now as far as Barbarian Rhetoric and Barbaric Soap, which we'll get into here in a few?
Yeah. See, if you don't, how do I go? You asked me about this before. Well, let them know. You asked me. I've been thinking on this. And I don't know if it's just time or I have no good answer, but I don't have any more where I look at it and go, this is just a black time in my life. I don't have those. It's like I look back and I look at them now, a failure is a learning experience as long as you get back up. That's how I look at it. I did mistakes. I don't regret any of them. It's like, hey, I did it. I owned it. And I think that's made me stronger. Now, if you'd asked me a decade ago, I'd probably be like a well of, this, and this. But the older I get, I'm like, oh, those are just learning experiences. I'll tackle, some would consider this a dark day. Me, I think it was a turning point. So let's switch a little to calling it a turning point. After the military, I was your typical guy. I'm not working out anymore because I don't have to. I don't have to take care of myself 100% because I don't have to. And then I proceeded to eat what I want, drink what I want, do whatever else I want, and got fat up over that 300 pounds points. And I'll go, this is where my boy saved my life. because we were at a Cub Scout thing and we had to do a little 1 mile hike. I believe he was in 4th grade at the time. And it was over, and we're talking Illinois. Illinois is basically flat. There are no hills. You know, we're talking a 10-foot hill. I made it about a quarter of a mile, and I physically could not breathe and go any farther.
Yeah.
And I asked one of the other parents, hey, can he finish the hike up with everybody? And I slowly trudged back, and I went and I sat down, and I went, this ain't happening. I'm dying. If I can't even do a mile hike, and, you know, a decade earlier, I was running up and down mountains with freaking guns and a heavy pack. And now I can't even go a basic rise or go for a mile hike. And that was when my transformation. If I had a low point, and I don't even call it a low point, I call it a turning point. I let myself go, and I was like, I had to change that. And that was probably the biggest one. It's like, I want to be able to run with my kid, outrun him, outlift him, and we just go have fun together. And that's what I proceeded to do. It's like I started working on that. I started losing the weight. Of course, you do all the goofy diets and all this stuff until you learn, you know, it takes a good year. If you don't go hook up with someone that knows what they're talking about, I think it takes a year to realize that everything you do that and read on the internet is just stupid. You know, each person is individual, but I lost the weight. The first time I stepped on a scale, it was 300 and something, and I know I had lost weight before that. And then I basically took me a little over a year, and I dropped down, and then the day I hit 199, I started lifting, which I'll tell people now, start lifting sooner. I left I left a year of time where I could have been lifting and building muscle, but I was so keen in and losing that weight that I was just, you know, basically starving, doing all the goofy diets just to rack it down. And then I started lifting and working my way back up. So that was a down thing, but that goes back to what you said earlier. My mind hit a point where it said I had to change, but I had to change the physicality first. And once the physicality changed, that was the transformation period. That was the time. The body, you lost that weight, you started the pressure, and you could almost track it as I built up strength and became stronger and became the man I was back before. My mind cleared up. And as my mind started to clear up, now you're making better decisions. Now you're figuring things out. And I still had some not so good points there. But it started waking it up. I was no longer a drone. I no longer was that mindset of just trudging through life, because the body got good, the mind started waking up. And when those two started waking up, and I talk about this quite a bit on a few posts, is that's when your spirit starts building back up. And they all complement each other, and they're all a balancing act. If you work too hard on one thing, the other two will get weaker. If you work on two of them, the other one gets weaker. You got to work on all three of them. And when you hit that point of unison and all three are on par, life is good. You know, very little things. Now, they still come out of balance, but they get back into balance faster. I still have my down days. I still have my moments. But that was my build-up and got me going again. And what, 3 years of transformation of getting back in that physical mental set. And that actually leads into another dark moment of, I actually worked and got the job I wanted. That was my dream job for 20 plus years. And part of the problem with that was I got to that point and I ended up hating it. Mm-hmm. What a lot of guys realize, it's like, I want this. Well, it's not the end point that does it for you. Men want to create, they want to build, they want to move forward. And you got to have, it's not just moving to the goalpost. You want to hit certain points and be like, good, but you need something else to build or create. And right. I basically worked myself into a spot where it was like, I just hated life.
Yeah.
And it was a good life. There was nothing wrong with it. People on the outside looking in are going, well, you accomplished it. I did, but I'm only in my 40s and I still plan to live a lot longer. And I finally got to the point where I don't see me doing this for the next 30, 40 years until, a nickel and dime retirement and everything else. And that's when I changed and I started. That's one thing that led into Barbaric Soap, which we'll talk about here or at some point.
Yeah, definitely want to move into that because it's a very interesting concept. I use it. I love it. A lot of guys are using it right now. And for people who don't know what it is, Barbaric Soap is, of course, veteran owned. It's made right here in the United States. And it's soap for men. And why is it not soap for women? You can use it too.
Hold on. But we're working on that, though.
Yeah.
Because I've had enough comments come back. We're bringing some stuff for the ladies here soon. So
good.
So
I had seen where there was one had posted. I can't remember who it was. He said that his wife and daughters kept stealing the soap. He'd go in there to take a shower and his soap's gone. It's because his wife and daughters kept taking the soap. But for those who are triggered by that, I have to say that while women have softer skin, men have more sensitive skin. Our skin is less prone to be able to tolerate the perfumes and the dyes and the things like that. So since we are more prone to that stuff, we need a better made soap with less ingredients. Enter Barbaric Soap. So how did Barbaric Soap start, and did it have anything to do with Fight Club?
No, even though there are a lot of Fight Club comments, even when getting going on it, it's like, people think of that. I was just looking at the time, and this is for anyone. If you're looking to start a business or create something, one, do something that needs replaced.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not giving away a trade secret. One of the biggest things, listen to some of the guys that sell watches or sell glasses or something, they're constantly looking for new customers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the great things about a disposable item that's good for you is you get returning customers. And I thank my returning customers. It's building up, it's slowly growing and building that core. But there's one of those things. So in my mind, it's like, okay, out of all the things that I can pick or what can I do, that was one of those key points. And I tossed around a lot of different ideas. A lot of stuff got thrown out back and forth. And then just one day I settled, like, this is it. And that's how I started going. I started working on the idea. I worked with another good guy, and he helped me with all my branding. And just did superb. I'm probably going to mess his name up, and I'll get a text later. But his name's Jorge, and he's on Twitter and stuff. But message me at some point or whatever if you need a guy to help with branding or he is so awesome. Mm-hmm. His mind thinks in such ways that it's like I just sit back in amazement and go, okay, this is cool.
Yeah, that it sounds a lot like kind of. I had a boss one time that told me, I told him, I said, look, dude, I'm a C student. He said, that's fine. You get the A students to do the work for you.
I like
so that. That's what you got to do. I mean, if I ever create, because I texted you last night. I am lost. I cannot figure out this. I used to build computers. I can't figure out how to get my WordPress going. But maybe eventually in the future, if I create something, I can get somebody to help me out with it. But
and I think that's a key point that a lot of guys, they try to do the whole thing on themselves.
Yeah.
There are, I can't even name all the guys that have helped me across the board. It's just a huge group of men have helped build it. Or, hey, I like this, I don't like that. Or, yeah, this works or whatever. And the list could go on. So even though it's my business, I have men helping me. They continue to help me. And if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't exist. Just the challenges, the accountability, and the help overall, that all plays into it. And I like that connection. Even though I'm creating and I'm improving and I'm changing, I like having all these connections because all it's doing is learning. I'm getting educated.
Mm.
So at the end of the day, Barbaric Soap is almost more for me than it is for other people, even though I'm putting out a good product, just because of the knowledge I'm gaining.
Mm.
It's in constant creation mode. I can do better. I can do this better, or I can change, or what do people like? Learn about marketing, advertising. You run into points, it's like, hey, I hit copyright. Well, I am not the best copywriter, so I find the copyright guy. I'm not the best guy on this or that. I have another guy that helps me on IG. All across in that whole group of building it, it's like its own mini tribe. And every one of those guys feeds in, and then I hope I give back as much as they give me. But it's a work, and it's more so than just selling soap. At the end of the day, it's selling an idea, and it's that barbaric mindset. It's like, hey, all these guys are working together to make something happen, and that's what I'm striving for, and that's what I'm really working toward on it.
Yeah, I like a lot of the I like a lot of the pitches that I don't know how much input you have. I know CJ puts out the stuff on the Barbaric Soap side about how you'll see the barbarians with the women, and your women want you to be, your woman wants you to be savagely clean, and he's got these hilarious stills from cheesy 80s movies and whatnot. And I think it's great because it adds a little humor to it, because sometimes you need that, because a lot of times when you have a business, it can't take itself seriously all the time.
Right.
So that's a lot of times what brings people to it. Like, what the hell is this cheesy this is pretty cool. So how many different types of, for those who don't know, the bars are named after ancient warriors. You got Leonidas, Genghis Khan, et cetera, et cetera. How many different bars do you have at this point?
Currently, we've dropped it down to 6. We had 8.
Okay.
So we dropped it down to 6, but part of that is some of the stuff, everything goes through a process. Some sells good, some doesn't. So we're working on that, but we're getting ready to bring more to market.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at probably, what are we on? Between 8 to 16. So the next rendition, we're going to start releasing some of these others, some for men, some for women. But I want to see what else other guys like. Those were my first picks.
Okay.
I have getting a lot of feedback, starting to learn some stuff. So we're starting to work. It'll stay in that range, and got to keep life interesting. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm guessing one of the bars for the women is going to be called Atalanta.
We'll see. I'm not giving any of that away early.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about single fatherhood. How old is your son?
He is now 13.
Oh, wow. So
full on in teen years. He has embraced it full-heartedly, so it makes life good.
So the cool thing about boys is they say that women hit their prime at this age and men hit their prime at this age. Men have a lot of primes. That's not discrediting women by any means. This just means that men have these different ages. One of them is 3. And you have the early teens, and you have the late teens, and you have the early 20s, and you screw your life up completely, and then you have your 30s, that kind of thing. Yes. So what are some of the things that, some of the values, ethos, et cetera, that you instill into your son, and do they change with each prime? Do they change with each age range, would you say? Do they upgrade?
They upgrade. Yeah. That's where I was going to go. They upgrade along the way because he starts to understand more. But change-wise, it's a building blocks. I had to make some decisions. Did I start off the best father? Probably not, but every father says that, and you're learning. There is no manual on it. Again, there's mentors and your father and stuff like that. But beyond that, we're all learning. And one of the big things is I at an early age started working with certain words like moderation. What does moderation mean? Honor. What does that mean? Responsibility. And at, 5, 6, 7 years old, he doesn't understand those words yet. And as he got older, you build on him. It's like a little bit here, a little bit there. And it's like building 1% at a time. And you have that growth. And then as he gets older, we have that open channel so we can talk to each other. And he can hit back on some of that and goes, da 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 da, XYZ, and you're like, he's starting to get it.
Right.
He's starting to put 2 and 2 together, starting to things, even in sports, good sportsmanship compared to bad, what's right, what's wrong. It's an 8, but there's certain things you're learning that it is. He's a very giving kid, which is awesome, unless you have a neighbor that's a moocher, So you have to explain those things to him, and you have to work through some of that. And it just takes time. And one of the key factors, and I'm not sure when this came about, I think it was more over time. In looking at my own childhood, I wanted to remove anger. I figured if I could remove anger from our relationship, then that would just make life easier, right? Plain and simple, if you think out of it. So one of the things I did was I hated chores. I fought with my parents on chores, didn't like doing chores, good, bad, or otherwise. So in my mind, I'm like, we're not going to do chores. Him and I just do stuff. There is no chore to take the garbage. It's, hey, when it's full, one of us takes it out. Or we might help each other. Now, does he need to know how to do something? Absolutely. This is how you do this, or this is how you clean the floor, or do dishes, or do whatever. But it's like, if he doesn't like doing it, why force him?
Right.
On the same hand, there's things he doesn't mind doing, and he knocks them out like anything, So good. Or feeding the dog. I'm up early, so I feed the dog in the morning. He takes care of the dog in the afternoon. But the removal of a thing that you talk to a lot of people, they're like, what do you fight over? Yeah, I'm trying to get my kid to do their chores. Remove the chore. Just work together as a family. And it's almost a foreign concept. It's like, well, we have to have a list of everything to do. Okay. Everybody does what they like and then tackle everything else. And I've basically applied that concept across the board. It's like, why do I get angry? What's the removal? Can I remove it? There's a key point. Can I remove the contentious thing and still have a sane house, clean house, whatever it is? I'm not going to do anything to my detriment, but at the same time, I'm working to move forward, and I've worked to instill that to the point now that we just work together. And there's times, we start cleaning the house, we clean the house together. The other day he was bored. What did he do? He cleaned the house himself. I'm like, cool. In working with moderation, working with responsibility and doing that, he has full access to like his Xbox. Half the time he's not even playing, he's watching YouTube or doing something else or tinkering. And if he has a chance, he'll go outside and play. He's become self-moderating to the point I don't have to worry about it. I almost have to slow him down because if it's raining and pouring, he wants to go out and play in the rain. And I'm like, no, you're going to get sick. And he's like, well, I don't even want to go do this. And I think those are all key points of, all right, you have it, so you don't have to worry about it. Dealing with firearms, he has them. I don't have to worry about them. I have taught him the proper usage of them. I'm not fearful of his safety around them.
Trigger alert, trigger alert.
Yeah, I know. That's huge. Sharp objects, all that stuff. If you teach him at a young age, then it's no big deal.
Right.
We have a motorbike. He knows how to ride it. He knows he needs to wear a helmet on it. He's safe on it. And I think that's the key is too many parents put their kids in this little bubble and say, oh, they can't use this or do this until this age. Well, why? I think it comes down to a maturity level. 2 7-year-olds don't have the same maturity level necessarily. One might be able to use a knife and whittle. The other one probably shouldn't have a sharp object until they're like 60. Yeah. And you got to gauge off that, not just a number.
Yeah.
and so there's how I've worked as a single parent, working with that. And I have this lovely lady that's my neighbor. She does daycare. She helped me out a ton. I always bring her up. I didn't do it on her own. I've worked to build the community. I know my neighbors. My neighbors help out. I've helped them. And I've actually, the old school thing of you need a village to raise a kid. I've created that and done my best at it, I should say, of working together and having all those different connections. So, I'm blessed. I get to live in a neighborhood. He can ride his bicycle up and down the street, and I pretty much don't have to worry about him. And I created that environment for him to grow.
Yeah. So just how lovely is this neighbor, Nathan?
Oh, well, she's old enough to be my mother, so.
Oh, moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember 13. 13 was great. That was dirt bike time for me. Had a great dirt bike. Didn't work half the time, but I learned how to work on it because it didn't work. And it's funny how that works out, because if it worked all the time, I mean, half the fun of owning something like that is having to work on it, change the spark plugs and mix the oil and gas. I had one of those. You had to mix the oil and gas. And you had all that kind of stuff. You had to sandpaper because we were cheap. We didn't want to buy those spark plugs. We sandpaper the spark plug. There it goes, and ride the dirt bike for another hour or whatever. And so yeah, 13 is a really good age. So I'm actually pretty psyched to see where it goes from there. Does he share your same interests as far as reading material and things of that nature?
He is more visual.
Okay.
So he's full on to the visual generation. I personally think later on in life he will delve it back into books again. He used to read a lot, but there's so much visual stimulation. We're oversaturated with it. But I think at some point he will go back to books. He's a very deep thinker. So in that thing, at some point, it's just he's going to decide one day and start chasing it.
Yeah.
Like anything, you force him to read or force him to do this, and it's like, nah, you might as well bang your head against the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. Force does not work, especially with boys. It just doesn't work, and especially at that age. And, there's nothing wrong with the visual. I don't play games as much as I used to. And it's not because of my age, it's because I just don't have time. I work 2 jobs. But I may game an hour a week, maybe an hour per 2 weeks. But I only play things that are really in depth. I don't do Call of Duty. I don't do things like that. I play things that are, sword and sorcery, because that's my thing, Conan, whatnot. So I'll do things like that. And I think boys need that kind of stimulation. It goes back to the office job. You can work that office job as long as you're doing other things. You can have that visual stimulation as long as you're doing other things. And it sounds like that you've got a really great kid because he was born to clean the house. A lot of kids aren't going to do that because they're too entitled to clean the house.
Right.
It goes back to the broken home. There's too much going on to clean the house. If it's trust fund kid, he's too entitled to clean the house. So it's really good that you have that and that you instilled that in him. So what I wanted to talk about next, and I'm going to let you just have the floor on this one because I don't even want to butcher the description. I wanted to talk about Fraternity of Excellence, which was started by Hunter Drew and
Craig James. Make sure we get both. Yes.
So it was Hunter and Craig. Okay.
Yes.
So both amazing guys that everyone should be following on across multiple platforms, Hunter Drew and Craig James. So I'm going to let you talk about what the Fraternity of Excellence is. And you recently went on a little endeavor that you guys got together and did some cool stuff. I've seen some videos of that. So we'll just start with what Fraternity of Excellence is, how you got involved with it, and what you guys did at the recent retreat.
All right. I'll read right off. We'll start with the Fraternity of Excellence, an online community for men by men that's committed to exhibiting masculine excellence through leadership. And and we engage in assignments, group calls, unwavering accountability, and more. And then I'll work off that. I tell a lot of people where the fraternity is different than a lot of groups out there is you normally have this one guy at the top and everybody does whatever he says. The fraternity is a round table. We have everyone from every walk of life. You have guys that are in their 20s all the way up into their elder years. You got guys that have nuclear families to guys that haven't had any. You have all the divorced guys that are dealing with one thing or another, and you got the guys that have remarried. The best part is we all learn from each other. There is no, okay, you're better than this or that or whatever, or some of the fights that you see on Twitter or IG over, this person's down or you're not enough. No. We're all working to improve ourselves. Some of us may move at the pace of a snail. Others are moving like a freaking roadrunner. You speed up, you slow down. Men have good days, they have bad days, and that's where accountability comes in. And I think that's one of the biggest things in the fraternity is our accountability factor. We work. It's like, okay, I want to get more fit. Guys go, okay, start reporting it. Or I'm working to make these financial goals, or I'm working to do this with my marriage, or whatever else, and then we can kick it back. And we've developed this cohesion to where you can talk eye to eye with a man. And between just doing normal chats, moving up to the Zooms, like talking on video chats or whatever, are all stepping stones to good. But the best thing is when we got past the digital media, out shaking hands, out looking guys in the eye. 2 years ago, has it been 2 years now? I think it has. I had no large group of male friends whatsoever. And since then, now I can say I do. I have guys that I can call up, and if the shit really hits the fan, they'd have my back, and vice versa. I've been working with some of them for a year now on different things, and it's grown, but I can go just about anywhere in the country and quite a few places in the world, and I can meet another fraternity member. And I never had a fraternity when I did a little bit of stint in school, but not enough. I was never in a fraternity. I was never in those big groups. It's the closest thing I've ever had to that military cohesion but I lost that. I moved away from that. And a lot of the military guys, we have that brotherhood again. And that's one of the main keys. It's building that strength of character. It's working forward and at your pace. Yeah. And we push each other because, who doesn't like a challenge? We make things harder. Why? Just because a lot of our endeavors, if you mess up, it involves push-ups. Most of the time, just self-inflicted. And we have to watch ourselves because it might go from 5 push-ups to the punishment is 100 in a matter of a few guys, in a matter of 5 minutes, it'd be like, oh, that sounds like 100 push-ups. Well, just because we like to challenge, we like to push ourselves, and men need that. They need that tribal. And you're starting to see those tribes. There's other ones that started before the fraternity. There's other groups out there. You're starting to see more, and men need that. Yeah. So there's one of my key things. If it's the fraternity, if it's one of the other groups, you need to find that group of men, and you can even have your small clan that's close to you or, within your region. But I think men need to be along to a bigger group. And that goes back to tribal, that goes back to Barbarian Rhetoric and Barbaric Soap and everything else. You're building to those tribes, you're building to those groups, and I found my home with the fraternity, and I'm glad I made it here. Tex from Texas Dom, he's on Twitter. He's the key point. I'd been following him for a while, and I basically kicked him an email one day and went, okay, is this group a money grab or are they legit? And he basically returned, went, they're legit, sign up now. and I signed up like the next day. And I have never looked back, and I'm glad I'm at where we are now, and it's just continuing to grow, just continuing to get better.
Yeah, it's not that expensive, and it's, especially when it's warranted, because like you said, men need a tribe, men need other men, and this is something that, funny story, this is something that Jack Donovan talks about, and Jack Donovan is one of my favorite authors, but he wrote Becoming a Barbarian after he wrote The Way of Men. But I think if you're the type of person like me, you're one of those sigmas, as they call it, and you prefer isolation, because isolation can be dangerous. If you prefer isolation and you think being the quote unquote lone wolf is the way to go, you may be incorrect. Some people can get away with it. I was not one of those people. I thought I was an introvert. I'm really not. I just kind of prefer to keep it to myself because I really just don't have a lot to say. And I started reading The Way of Men, and The Way of Men is a lot about finding a tribe, establishing that tribe, how we view social creatures, which we talked about earlier. But it throws you into that. Becoming a Barbarian eases you into that. So if you're the type of person who thinks isolation is the way to go, I'm a lone wolf, whatever, then if you read The Way of Men first, you're going to get a few pages in and put it down. If you read Becoming a Barbarian, it's I consider Becoming a Barbarian a prequel. It eases you into that tribal mentality, and you start to understand. Because I was a guy who was like, I'm not reading this book. I'm not. Love Jack Donovan. I did not want to finish this book. Until I read Becoming a Barbarian, I did not want to finish The Way of Men. So anyone who has his books and feels the same way, that I want to go ahead and throw that out there. But for someone who, if you think that isolation is the key, if you're in your darkest hours and you don't know why, because there's nothing worse than being depressed and not knowing why, and you don't have a good, strong group of men in your life, you need to work on finding them. You need to find a gym bro. You need to find some guys at work. You can find the most beta male guys at work and say, hey guys, let's get a gym membership and go. And you'll all become something better. So I 100% agree that men need other men need tribes. You know, they also need women. Let me go ahead and say that.
Yes. Men
do need women. They need women to complement their lives. But if you have just women in your life, and you don't have the men in your life, you're just gonna go downhill. You're just gonna be a tumbling turd rolling down a hill, not knowing why, not knowing where to go. So I think the Fraternity of Excellence is really great. And what did you guys do on this recent retreat that you went on?
We were down in, it's our second meetup. We had 24 guys that made this one. And we had quite an adventure. If anyone catches any of our pictures and stuff, we were out ziplining. That was the main thing. We had a little bit of challenge course, some stuff to make our minds work. And then several of them posted us. We got to go jump over a 12-foot wall and work together to make that happen. We were supposed to go canoeing. The only canoeing we got done was from our little island, because when it rains in Florida, the river rises.
Right.
So we had some fun, the river things, but we adapted and overcame. That's one of the neat things. No one was complaining because of the situation. We made the best of it, and we made things work. And there's that balance. We just, we sat around, we talked, we had great conversations, and we learned stuff. And we kidded each other. And you can talk freely, and there was no, we didn't have to worry about the PC police. We made fun of them, we worked through all of that, and it was just, it creates that atmosphere where it's its own little bubble, but at the same time, it's a break from all the rest of reality. Mm-hmm. That few moments of time, you can come together, work together, make things happen, and you make those stronger bonds. Men I met there, I got to shake their hands, some of them for the first time, got to look them in the eye and have conversations. That just made our relationship stronger. Some of them I'd been talking to for almost 2 years. Finally got to meet them. Some I've been talking to and been meeting up half a dozen times. I have a bunch of guys that were there and that we meet up else place that I've seen more than my own brothers. So it's growing. They live close, you know, we do that. And those big groups add just another dimension. We'll have the smaller meetups, which is 4 or 5 guys getting together for a dinner or a small adventure or something. But when you get that many guys together, it adds that extra element, and it's just fun.
Yeah.
The day, it's fun.
Did you guys run into any gators?
No. The area we were in was for the most part gator free, even though we did hear from if it floods, some of the gators will float up. But I guess the water's too cold for them, so we didn't really see too many.
Okay.
Talking gators, though, on the way down to Florida, my boy goes, I want to go to a gator farm. We ended up getting over to a gator farm. He ended up holding a gator, which was cool. Little baby gator. I don't know. I'm holding my hands up like anyone will see. It was probably 2 feet, 3 feet long.
Oh, wow.
But the people that worked the place said we got lucky because it's been chilly. So they all been in hibernation and hiding. Well, it was warm that day, so they were out sunning themselves. So we got, I don't know, there was probably 50, 60 gators or more, little baby gators. We had fun at the gator farm. So, but that was really the only gators we had.
I mean, that still sounds pretty awesome. So, yeah. So before we wrap it up, I know I had sent you this to get something together. I want to go through. I want you to offer 5 lessons that you would give to men, not only men. It's men who have lost their way, men who may be on their way, and for young men coming up in today's society. What are the 5 lessons that you would give to them?
I knew it was something else. All right. I'm going to cheat a little bit. There we go. What's funny, when you asked me that, I had actually just written a piece on 5 upgrades. And I think this blended, you asking me this, me already writing it out, blended these things. One of the biggest things is reading. We talked about with my boy, I think he'll go get your hands on books, get your hand on old books. There's a ton of new material out here. You have Sanction behind you, great book. We talked about Jock Donovan and great stuff. You got all the blogs, you have all this, and that has there's a certain feel to it because it has the modern aspects to it. But I think people need to go back and they need to read classics. And they need to read some of the older materials and read the old tales, because all of it leads into, what's the word? Even Conan. Conan's not just a sword and sorcery book. There's a lot of morals and values into those books written in story form. And one of the best things is you go back before the written word, everything was passed through story. The storytellers were prominent men. And there's a reason for that, because all these lessons were taught through stories. And that's where a lot of the older books do. They have a moral, they have these stories. And as you come up through, I started noticing it in the late 90s. I felt books just became repeats. There was nothing new material, and it was fluff. There was no moral to the story. It's like, oh, okay, this guy beats this guy up, da-da-da-da-da. The next thing you know, it's over, and reading became boring to me for a while. And I added it up one time. If I haven't read 10,000 books yet, I'm really close to. I'm up. I know I'm at least over 7,000 plus books. I think I'm closer to 10K, but I don't have a definite number. But I've read a little bit of everything. I've read classics. I've read foreign stuff. I've read science fiction, mythology, and everything else, old tales. And that just gives you a bigger grasp of the world at large. Given all these different viewpoints, bringing everybody together, what they written into them. And when you read it like a deep book on theology, that's almost a school book, and then you compare it to something like Conan, and you put those two together, you're like, oh, you have those dawning moments of, all right, this isn't just a story. This is what he's trying to get across.
Right.
Even if it's just a short chapter, is all of it a big, hey, you need to look? No, lots of it's just for fun, but you can pull those nuggets out of it. Yeah. So that's one of my key, and that goes for any age level. Young, old, male, female, doesn't matter. The more you read, the better informed you are, and sticking closer to those classic books, I think you can improve your life that way. Next, I'm going to hit it up with courses. Schooling, and I'll throw schooling in here. I'm not a big fan of the universities and colleges anymore, but it also depends on what you're doing. If you're going to be an engineer and build bridges, yes, I want you to go to a 4-year school. If you're going to be a doctor, yeah, I want you to go to the school to learn to be a doctor. If you're just going to learn how to write better, oh yeah, okay, possibly. And that's its own podcast on its own. Mm-hmm. But that comes down, you have schooling, you have trade schools, which I have a huge trade background, and I see it getting weaker. But at the same time, you have all the online courses. There's more information, more courses, more ways to learn than ever before. You can go get stuff free off YouTube. But my key point there is don't get stuck in constant learning.
Right.
If you want a course, okay, did you do the one before it? And if you did the one before it and you learned it, does the next one help you or go? And I think too many men get stuck in, hey, I bought the newest course. I bought this course, or I did this course. Why? What's your reasoning? And you're like, well, I'm learning new stuff. You need to start taking action and applicate it. Do something, take action, learn it. And then on top of that, and this is a missing point, and where I go back to like at the beginning when we talk mentorship, teach somebody. There's the other key problem is, hey, I'm trying to teach other people. Well, when you teach someone, you both learn something because you impart old knowledge to them. They're learning something, but they'll usually come and hit you with a question, and hitting you with that question will either A, trigger something you had forgotten about, or make you rethink a problem going, hey, there is a better way. So in the whole scheme of courses and schooling and teaching, there's all different avenues, but you need to take action when you're going through here. You don't get stuck in the constant masturbation of just learning.
Right.
And you see too many men getting to do that, and it's like, no, take a break.
Yeah.
Make something happen.
Learning without application.
Correct. Social media. And this is funny because we're the first episode of your podcast. Too many people use it as just a adrenaline drug, a dopamine drug for them. If you're not networking, you're not selling on it, you're not using it to your advantage, get off of it.
Right.
Go do something physical. Cut your time down. You can have a presence on social media that encompasses a day, but you can narrow it down where your actual time spent on it is minimal. And I think more people need to work toward a minimal amount of time, but have a presence.
Right.
Start teaching people. And that's one of those, I've written about it in several different places on my blog. And I won't go in depth here, but I think that's a key point. You got to make it work for you. Just like doing courses, you need to take action. On social media, same thing. Drive that home, and that can encompass all age groups. And we get lost in it. One tweet, another tweet, an hour later, you're still playing on Twitter, and all of the other stuff didn't get done. And you need to put some self-stoppers in that. Another one, which we have talked on and off around here, back and forth, is get around other men.
Yep.
For the longest time, and this is something the fraternity helped me with, it's something Craig James mentions all the time, and I fought it for the longest time, and that is find local men in your community. Well, I thought I had exhausted the concept of there aren't all that great men. I didn't know where they were. I didn't want to go hang out in the bar. I wasn't doing the bike nights anymore for the whole Harley crowd. I wasn't doing, a bunch of this. And it's like, okay, where are the men? There still has to be spots, Yes, a lot of guys will be like, well, women have invaded everything. And I'm even one of those. They've taken over so many different things that were just men. But I found out along the way that there is a paywall. That was my missing part. Is you have all these groups and all the freebies, and those aren't the kind of men I want to go hang out with. Those are the guys that are, just blowing money, wasting it. And I started finding out that there's certain shops. I got a cigar shop. I got the yachting club. I got different other things, but they cost something to belong. Just like the Fraternity Excellence costs something, there's that paywall. It's there for a reason. The different clubs that are around town, they have paywalls. Well, if you get past that paywall, and it's usually not that expensive, you find there's a different level of guys. That's where your business owners hang out. This is where your guys that, they've done well from themselves and people you can learn from. And I didn't gather that. So, back to the fraternity, talking with guys about it. Good guy like Craig telling me, hey, keep looking. I drug my feet, but I've been looking, and I started finding it. And I think more men can find the local places around an area. Are they hid? Are they little hole in the walls? Absolutely. Yeah. Is it the last place you think you're going to go? More than likely. Can you find them on a Google search? Maybe, maybe not. But you got to get out and explore. One thing men should do, go out and explore. Go out and get around. Go see stuff. Go check a place out. Go check a store out or a restaurant or whatever else and see who goes there, and you'll get surprised.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm starting to go, all right, this is awesome. And opened up my eyes, and there's a learning thing. I thought it didn't exist. I was proven wrong. And now I'm going forward and telling other people, hey, I was in this boat. Now I'm finding it. Mm-hmm. So that's a key component. Big on the tribe, big on finding the men and going around. And will they become your next tribe? Probably not. But at the same token, it's just good to talk with other men in your community.
Yeah.
You never know when you may have to pull together. A disaster could hit. Something could happen. And you go along, and instead of having 50 guys show up at something that no one knows anybody, well, I know 4 of them. The couple guys know me, but they know these guys. And the next thing you know, you're working together as a team because a bunch of you know each other.
Right.
And that's how it should be. That's how communities should work. And we need to go back to.
Exactly. Yeah, social media is definitely because you have to use technology. You have to use everything for what it's good for. And social media is one of those things. It can be a brain fryer, or it can be how you establish a business. It can be how you meet people in your community. It can be a great thing. It can be a tool. It can be a piece of shit, and it can turn you into a piece of shit, or it can be a tool. It's just how you use it. So I have met so many great people, including yourself, and I'm talking about male and female, because I'm probably going to have to go ahead and throw that out there. a lot of times that I'm not a misogynist, and none of us are. But I've met a lot of great people of both genders that have taught me a lot about a lot of things, and we need that. We don't need it. It goes back to what I said. We don't need isolation. That's the last thing we need. We need it every once in a while, but we don't need it 95% of the time. It's only for meditative purposes, honestly.
Yes, that's a good way of stating it. My daily walks, or try to get out to the Grove of Pines. I've posted that a few times on.
I love those. I actually pull up when I wake up in the morning. I pull up Instagram to see what grove you're in. That's what I do every morning. I'm like, where is Nate? Where is he at?
Yeah.
So
and I'm finding more. But yeah, that pine grove, and it was an old Christmas tree farm. So they're all in lines, but it has a certain essence to it that it's not that big, but it'll shut off the world around you. And yeah, I enjoy going there. It's a good place just to let the mind relax, think about other things.
Right.
And then, funny enough, we've talked physical somewhat through here. You hear all the time, go lift. We even talked about it, going getting fit and everything. And I think those two words annoy me to a certain extent, because it's so much more nuanced than that. It's like, tell someone, hey, go do this. But it goes back to, if you don't know, well, then where do you start?
Right.
Where do you do your research? And helping guys out, and then even in my own personal journey through the physical fitness, I think the biggest thing that a lot of guys screw up is we don't decide our endpoint for ourselves. And that's one of those key things. You know, if you want to be a power lifter and go do powerlifting meets, or just be strong as fuck, go find a power lifter to help train you.
Right.
On the opposite hand, if you want to go run the Boston Marathon, don't go talk to the powerlifting coach. Go talk to someone that teach you marathon or marathon. On the other hand, if you want to be a bodybuilder and look like Arnold, go hang out with the bodybuilders.
Yep.
If you want to be a CrossFitter, and I think even when I'm researching, I'm looking, I try to dig a little deeper. It's like, oh, I like this program, or I like what this guy's doing, but why? What type of person is he? And there's the kernel for anyone that's going in. When you hear go lift, those are two key words. You have to decide what type of person you are. Me right now, I'm basically chasing maintenance and functional strength. I want to look good too, so I have a little blended. My current exercises, reflect that of what I'm chasing, what I'm going after. And there's the decision. This is what I'm going for now. Now, the thing is, you're not stuck. Just because you're going, and one of the guys I have followed on and off for over the years is the Rhino, Stan Efforty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The world's strongest bodybuilder, as he said, because he got his pro card in it. He also conquered powerlifting, but he didn't do them at the same time.
Nope.
And there's the key point. He's like, I want to be a powerlifter. So he started powerlifting, and then he wanted to be a bodybuilder. I think he wanted to be a bodybuilder second, if I remember right. But listening to him, and there's the key point, and that helped me go, oh, I shouldn't be doing all these body, building exercises along with the powerlifting. There's the key point, it's what do you want as your end point?
Right.
Then find the people to help you get there.
Yeah.
And I think that gets lost, especially in the Twitter sphere. People just go lift. Well, what does that mean? And you need to go beyond just those two words, but it's a starting point.
Yeah.
And that's where, if a guy hears it, or you hear this podcast, it's reach out. Talk to the different groups. Talk to different people. Find a picture of what you want to look like. you know. But if you're chasing somebody like Brian Shaw, who's 6'6" or 6'8", something, I
Yeah.
don't know, and you're 5'10", guess what? You're not going to look like Brian Shaw and do what he's capable of. It's just, it's not there. But
and you're not going to eat 16,000 calories a day either. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So.
Right. So you got to look at your genetics. They do play into it. Can you adapt and overcome to a certain extent? I believe so. But I think that's where a lot of guys starting off, especially when they've let themselves go. They've gained all those extra 100 pounds or more, and they're there, and it's like, oh, well, where do I start? Well, like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. Start working through it, but you need to have that end goal of where you want to go, and then you can start sooner.
That's right.
That was one of my failures. I did everything with diet and cardio to lose the weight.
Right.
Now I know better that I should have started lifting right off the get-go, and then I'd have done good. And then it's just like you get stuck in fat mode where you lost the weight, but now you want to put muscle on, but you're afraid to eat.
Right.
And you got to change your mindset again, where if you were doing everything good right off the get-go and had your end goal in mind, you can skip a lot of heartache. So that's what I wanted to finish up with, just that last thought. And I think a lot of guys get confused by it. I know I sure did. And if I was confused by it, I'm guessing there's thousands others that are like, well, I hear all this stuff. And that goes back to that information overload. You got to be careful with it.
That's right. Yeah. And something I wanted to touch on is that, just like what you said, what I always tell people, you always want a catchphrase, and my catchphrase is, it starts in the gym. That's 90% of what I say. It starts in the gym. What that means is get physical. It doesn't mean lift heavy. It doesn't mean lift light. It doesn't mean anything specific. It means find what you want to do and do what you enjoy doing. I don't think working out should be fun. I think it should be effective. I don't, if you're really trying to push yourself and change your body, change your physique, and get better, it's not going to be fun, because pain is not fun. Lactic acid buildup is not fun. So as a trainer, I tell people, here's what you need to do. If you want to lose fat, you need to build muscle. And cardio burns fat temporarily, muscle burns fat forever. The more muscle you build, the more fat you're going to burn at rest. But some people can't lift weights. Some people are just so jacked up that they can't lift weights. So you can use calisthenics. You can do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is something that you can do where you'll get in shape and learn how to defend yourself at the same time. You need to research it. But the thing about it is a lot of people may not know how to research it. But there are people like us who are out there, and we're trying to help people. So with that being said, how can everyone find you across the social media platforms?
Of course, there's the blog, barbarianrhetoric.com. That's one of the easiest ones. That's also my on IG, on Twitter @SteelJanz. That's the easiest way to find me there. Those are the two main ones. And then I have Barbaric Soap on IG if you want to go that route, or barbaricsoap.com if you want to check that stuff out. Those are the quickest avenues to me.
Awesome. So get out there, follow Nathan, because if you follow him, you're going to get linked up with a lot of other great people who can help you out going forward. You can find me at _primal_fire, both on Instagram and Twitter. And Nathan, thank you so much for doing this.
Yes, it has been awesome.
Absolutely. I will see you soon, brother.